First Trades, presented by BSC, Investors Protect.
Well, as we're running into market opening, let's welcome our next guest in, Pirojsha Godrej, MD and CEO of Godrej Properties. Pirojsha, thanks for joining us this morning. Now, you would be hearing some of the calls that are coming in. There's tremendous interest in real estate stocks, which is back in the market. But you tell us what's happening on ground. Is demand actually picking up in all the geographies that you are in?
I think real estate demand, particularly in the residential space, for projects that are well located and are priced appropriately, we think has always been there and will always be there in the Indian market. I think we've been very encouraged by the response our Gurgaon project received. Clearly, we're very optimistic about the response this project we're launching, which is called Godrej E-City and is an electronic city in Bangalore. We're very encouraged about the response this project will receive as well. Already before the official launch, we've been able to sell almost 100 apartments in this project. So I think, we do see things at a reasonable level already. But certainly with some of the reformist measures the government has been introducing recently, and with our expectation that there will be some easing of monetary policy over the next 6 to 12 months, I think there is absolutely further reason to be optimistic about the prospects over the next 1 year. I do think overall the data we've seen suggests that volumes are down in most cities across the country, and I think although for good projects there has been a reasonable response, I think this could be even better once general economic sentiments improve.
Just help me get a sense of what is happening. Has the sentiment turned positive? What is the inventory position now stand at? Because you've got festivities around the corner. Could that improve?
Okay, just 1 second. Let me ask that question. Samina was asking it. I think there's an issue with the mic. Pirojsha, very quickly, your inventory situation right now. Are you still sitting on unsold inventory, or is everything almost getting into the market?
Yes, of course, having some inventory is actually a good thing in real estate. You don't want to necessarily sell everything you have immediately. For example, even though in Gurgaon we sold our entire first phase in a single day, we do have another phase of the project which we would like to sell more gradually to make sure we further improve margins in the project. So in almost all our projects we do have some amount of inventory. I think the last 2 months have been good in that we've had some very successful launches, but that is more from the fact that we were able to get these projects launched than any huge change in market sentiment. We've been maintaining that even over the last 6-8 months, we've been able to see reasonably good volumes in our residential developments, even in the first quarter of this financial year, which is a very weak period for the economy in this.
Pirojsha, give us a few minutes. We'll come right back to you. I'm just going to quickly address market morning. Well, let's go back to Mr. Godrej, who we've been chatting to just a few minutes ago. Mr. Godrej, what has then been the trend in pricing? I mean, have you been able to hike prices in the last couple of months?
I think we have seen moderate price increases in most markets. It's been sharper in some areas. For example, our Gurgaon project, we sold at a rate that was quite substantially higher than we would have planned even, say, 6 months before that. But even in markets where volumes haven't been as great, like the Mumbai market, we've seen very positive responses to our projects. Our project in Vikhroli, for example, is today selling at a price that's about 30% higher than the price we launched it at about almost exactly now 1 year ago. And we've been able to sell reasonably good volumes there. So I think, broadly, prices have also seen reasonable momentum. Keep in mind also, though, that the cost structure for almost all developers has been under pressure over the last couple of years, both in the form of input costs, clearly things like steel and cement, also, of course, the cost of actually constructing it in form of construction labor, but also in terms of financing costs have all gotten more expensive. So I think, on balance, some amount of price escalation was warranted from that perspective. But clearly, I think where we'd like to see things get even better than they have been is on the volume front. I think pricing in most Indian cities is reasonable and has kept pace with the kind of inflation we've seen. But I think what has not been very encouraging over the last year is that the national data is showing that in almost all cities, volumes are actually down. While we as a company have been able to, because we've had a lot of new projects added and a lot of new launches planned, we've been able to show growth. I think from a sector perspective, it would be great to see volumes return.
Pirojsha, how is the volume pricing balance then playing out? I mean, you've got festive season around the corner, Diwali is coming up. Will developers really, I mean, will you guys be willing to hold on to prices to, of course, give volumes a boost?
I think certainly for us at Godrej Properties, volume is the bigger focus. Of course, we need to have prices that allow us to make some money. But I think clearly the way we feel we can grow our business and the way we think we can create over time a truly world-class and sizable real estate development company is by achieving consistency and consistent growth in volume. So I think that is our priority. Each developer would have a different strategy. Each project may have a different strategy. If you have a very small project that's very premium, you may want to, sell quite slowly and play for margins. On a more, mid-income housing project, you may want to push for more volume. So I think there are some inherent differences there. But I think my best hope for the industry would be that prices continue to increase gradually along with inflation, but that we see a very, very sharp increase in the kind of volumes being sold. And I think that is what ultimately will be good for all stakeholders in the sector, whether it is developers, whether it's the government, or of course ultimately the customers. And I think there is huge inherent demand for real estate. So whatever we say about, weakened economic conditions or high pricing, we must forget that housing is a very basic need and a very basic desire for everyone. So I think the access to that housing is something that's very important, and if that can happen through lower interest rates and an improved economic climate, I think that again will be beneficial to all stakeholders.
Pirojsha, let's talk about Godrej Properties itself. Now, you're in so many different geographies. You've just launched in Bangalore. You've done your launch in the NCR. Which market are you bullish on? What is your launch pipeline looking like? And allow me to ask you this. There's been a lot of speculation about you doing a deal with HDIL for a development in Bangalore. Is there any truth to that at all?
Our launch calendar over the next 6 months is perhaps the busiest it's ever been in the history of the company. We have launches, in addition to the 2 launches we've just done in Bangalore, we have launches in Ahmedabad, we have several launches in Mumbai, we have a launch in Kolkata, launch in Pune, launch in Hyderabad, second phases in NCR. So we do have a very, very robust launch calendar in a variety of cities. And I think that will really allow us to, that will really be the driver of our growth over the next couple of years. We've been very successful in adding new projects over the last 18 months. We've added about 14 new projects. Most of these projects either have already been launched or will be launched over the next 6 to 12 months. And I think those will be a key driver of our future growth. On your second question, at any given time we are talking to a huge number of potential partners for new developments. We, as a matter of policy, make sure that not to comment on anything until a deal is finalized. And talking about discussions that fell through would be an unending list, because for every successful project there are at least 10, 20, and maybe even 50 or 100 discussions that take place.
Okay. Pirojsha, we've been discussing all about the demand-supply scenario and how, improved the market seems to be. But let's look at the ground reality. Liquidity had been a huge issue for the sector over the last 1 year. Now, I know that's not an issue for you at Godrej Properties. But speaking about the sector as a whole, is it any easier to access bank funding and financing today than it was, let's say, 6 months back?
It's a tricky question. As you said, I think we've been relatively advantaged in our ability to access capital, both in the form of equity. For instance, in March, we did India's first ever institutional placement program. We also recently tied up a partnership to invest in new projects with some leading global investors. And, on the debt side, we have perhaps one of, if not the lowest borrowing costs in the sector. So I think, we've not seen any concerns in that area. Clearly, I think for the sector as a whole, capital availability is a major issue. I think what has happened is that both equity and debt capital have been relatively difficult to access for the sector as a whole. And hopefully, yes, that will improve. I think if general economic sentiment improves, if interest rates, as we expect them to, start declining, Certainly, I think that will reinvigorate the real estate sector. I think certainly, it is a sector that is very cyclical, and I'm quite optimistic that over the next 12 months we've seen already the bottoming out of the curve, and we'll see a steady improvement going forward.
Pirojsha, very lastly, before we of course wrap up this discussion, do you have any sort of fundraising plans, any project level fundraising that you're looking at?
Yeah, we're not looking at any kind of major capital raising over the next couple of months. The commercial paper thing you mentioned is simply another form of debt and a way to further lower our average borrowing cost, but that's not, not in any way equity or anything like that. The only kind of capital that we are open to, which is something that we're always open to, is project level investments, particularly for some of our commercial projects. But certainly we're not looking in the very near future at any entity level capital raising. As I mentioned, we've quite successfully raised some capital already over the past few months.
Hi, thanks Adan Pirojsha. Always great talking to you. So that's perspective coming in on what the real estate space is looking like, whether or not that recent rally in some of these stock prices justifies the actual business. Outlook's positive, and Pirojsha Godrej clearly betting big on the festive season. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of First Rate Markets. Down to
First Trades presented by BSC Investors Protect.